Okay. Well, this is probably a review that a lot of people have talked about, especially in light of the, 1 second, please. Especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic. Yeah, I think this is probably. I'm mainly doing this because I saw a review from Double Toasted last week or a few weeks ago, and I got inspired to talk about this because this is one of those movies that I've seen so much that I think I can have a very strong opinion. Most of it's going to sound like the consensual stuff you hear on movie review websites, but I'll try to at least have some original thoughts in this. So, with that being said, Osmosis Jones, yeah, this is actually kind of an interesting movie because when I first saw it, I was a little confused. Not by the plot. The plot's actually, it's weird, but you get it pretty quick. Um, what I mean weird was that I saw this movie for the first time on Cartoon Network when I was about 10. And at the time, I knew that there was this cartoon called Ozzy and Drix, which was the spin-off from the movie. But I saw the show first. I didn't realize it was a spin-off from a feature film. I did not make that connection until I saw the movie. I just thought Osmosis or Ozzy and Drix was just some cartoon someone threw randomly put together for Cartoon Network for whatever. But yeah, so the plot of Osmosis. I mean, I don't really feel like I need to explain the plot because I feel like that's one of those movies that's been talked about a lot. I mean, at the time it was released, people kind of forgot about it and wrote it off. But people my age or a little older are kind of remembering this movie, and there actually is a lot of good stuff to like about it. Um, and the plot of this movie, I know most of you probably already know the plot, but the plot is that Bill Murray is a disgusting middle aged man who gets infected with a virus, and a reckless cop, voiced by Chris Rock, the title character, has to try and defeat the virus and not only redeem himself, but save Frank from getting killed. Um, that's really the basic plot of this movie. And I want to talk about the good stuff first, because I'm usually a very upbeat kind of guy. And what I can say is that the animation, for a movie that relies heavily on bathroom humor, a lot of the jokes that do fall in that realm in the animated segments, they're actually pretty good, and there's a lot of funny comedic banter. And I like how the beginning of this movie is kind of like Beverly Hills Cop, where you have the main character doing a huge chase throughout the city that causes a lot of damage and gets him in trouble with his the police chief. I think that's kind of fun. I'm not sure how much of Osmosis Jones was inspired by Axel Foley, the reckless cop and kind of stuff. I mean, it is kind of like a Beverly Hills Cop meets Fantastic Voyage. It's a weird combination, you know. And right off the bat, Chris Rock, I mean, I've only seen the animated films that he's been in. I haven't seen him in live action roles. But he's actually a pretty good voice actor. And I think the fact that he has such a, for lack of a better term, animated voice, I think that does give the animators a lot of fun with trying to have the characters he's voicing, just giving them all the body language and the facial expressions. And another thing that I think that they really do well is that they understand that Ozzy is a white blood cell, so they take advantage of the fact that he can contort, twist, and morph his body into whatever shape he feels like for his advantage. So it is actually pretty creative. And I also think, as far as the other elephants in the room on the animation side, I think it's I think it is a cool idea to get David Hyde Pierce as the Drix, the cold pill that Ozzy has to team up with. And I think it's kind of a good idea because this is an action adventure movie, but and since it's a cartoon, they can get a voice actor that has the right voice for Drix, but not necessarily the right muscle-bound physique. Because it is kind of interesting, because in the behind-the-scenes feature of a DVD, they said they wanted to have fun with the idea of this pill being like an action hero. Let's get someone that's not an action hero at all, so that kind of adds to the irony of it. You know, we have this badass crime fighter who's voiced by a guy who's a wimpy intellectual on Frasier. That's actually that's an interesting idea. And I do like the dynamic. I do like how there is a friendship that eventually builds between the two characters, even though they kind of are at each other's throats throughout most of it. And as for the other characters, Mayor Fleming, voiced by William Shatner, I know at the time he was just supposed to be a satire of incompetent politicians that only care about their power and not so much everyone else. That's frighteningly ringing true compared to the fact that we're dealing with a deadly disease now, and we have a president who's basically made a mockery of himself and his associates in the process of not only the term, but just handling this pandemic in general. That's all I really want to say on that. Just throwing that out there right now. Anyway, as far as the villain is concerned, this is where things get really interesting, because this is in essence a PG movie. They were going to make it a PG-13 film, but they dumbed down the swearing and the violence to make it more family friendly. But there's some pretty violent death scenes in this movie. Most of it is about cells getting killed off. And Thrax, voiced by Laurence Fishburne. I mean, Laurence Fishburne has a great, deep, testosterone-filled voice, where his character, what I like about his character is that he kind of has this very disturbing, sick charm to him. And it's kind of disturbing because he takes the fact that he's murdered several people, but he brags about it like a hunter would to his friends at a bar about a buck he killed or a bear he shot. So to him, killing is just a game. And at the very end, when Ozzy is fighting Thrax at the end, there's a scene where Thrax is like, "Watch me take down Frank's daughter." It's just like, this isn't a kid's film? This guy is talking about murder. He's clearly getting off on it. He enjoys violently murdering people. And he's bragging about it like a high school jock would after a football game? I know that's my shocked face, but it looked like I was kind of yawning. Let's be honest. You thought I was yawning watching the video, and then you yawned yourself. Be honest. No, seriously, comment down below if that happened. Okay. So, as far as the animation is concerned, it's a pretty solid film. I do like the idea that it is a redemption story. I do like the idea that it is about two unlikely heroes coming together and fighting off a very dangerous villain. So I think the animation portion kind of nailed it. Now for the live action portions. Before I continue with the live action portion, I need a sip of this if I'm going to talk about the live action stuff. PBR, my friends. Yeah, I just like this beer. I'm sorry. Ugh. Woo! So, the live action portions. Okay, for one thing, there are 4 directors that worked on this film. Pete Sito and Tom Kroon worked on the animation portions. And these were guys that worked on, like, animated supervisors on, like, on Aladdin and other Disney stuff, so they really knew what they were doing. The Farrelly brothers, who we know were well known for raunchy adult comedies that do specialize in gross-out humor or frat boy humor, on paper, that's not a bad idea, but here's my problem with this. they assume that if you do something disgusting in a movie that's labeled as a comedy, then doing something gross in their mind automatically equals humor. It does not. Having disgusting scenes in your movie does not make it automatically funny, regardless of whatever setup you use. It makes it disgusting. And yeah, and that's my problem, because they cast Bill Murray, and Bill Murray he is a great actor. He's done a lot of wonderful films in his career, but he's funny in a couple scenes, but they really neuter his wise ass charm, and they just kind of make him this unfunny, depressed kind of guy. And to the film's credit, they do imply that he's coping with the loss of his wife, and so far he's just kind of disregarded hygiene. I mean, I can understand some things like not shaving, overeating, or drinking heavily. I can understand that, but going so far as to eat an egg that was in a chimp's mouth that you choked to get the egg back, and now the egg has fallen into the bottom of that ape's enclosure. Yeah, he's lucky that Thrax took a couple days for his virus to start infecting the body. He's lucky he didn't get food poisoning that killed him. He's lucky that didn't happen. And there's a lot of things. It's just weird that Bill Murray eats almost everything that comes his way. And there's even a scene in like a science fair where he eats a clam that was a part of a kid's science experiment. It's like, no human being would be stupid enough to eat that. And unfortunately, another problem with the character is that while he does try to do the right thing from time to time, he's kind of being rude to his daughter by ignoring her concerns and her fears that he could die if he doesn't take care of himself. And what do you know? He almost kicks the bucket at the end. And I do feel sorry for the character of Frank because of what he's going through. I just wish they made him a more charming. If they made him more like the Bill Murray, if they made him more like the lovable Bill Murray from like Groundhog Day or Ghostbusters or Stripes or something like that, or if they made him, or What About Bob? If they were able to direct Bill Murray and make him more likable and more charismatic like he usually, or more likable and more charming like he usually is, I think this could have worked. And I think if they tried to avoid gross out humor and try to play more of Bill Murray's strengths and use you can use some gross out humor, but not to this degree. So I feel like the live action, I think the live action scenes are ultimately what train wrecked the film's chances at the box office. And I think it's ultimately why a lot of people write off the film as disgusting. I kind of see this movie as a mixed bag. I feel like the animation stuff is great. Some of the live action stuff is passable, but the humor, they were very lazy with the concept of gross out humor, I'm afraid. I personally think that what's interesting about the movie now is because of the time of the coronavirus pandemic. I think this is probably an okay film that you could show your kids, although it is a PG film, and I think for the time period it came out in, it's probably what I would consider a hard PG, because there is some pretty brutal, there's some cellular violence in this. So with Thrax is kind of a disturbing character. He's kind of like a suave version of the Joker, more on the handsome charm and less on the disheveled freak. you know? So that's kind of an interesting take on it. And it is kind of cool seeing a lot of stuff going on throughout the body and all the different parts of the city. So it is an interesting film to look at just based on the character design and the animation portions. But for the live action segments, you might want something like this or a little stronger on hand if you want to get through it without being too grossed out. Hopefully YouTube doesn't kill me for going over 15 minutes on this video, but as I did before the live action segments, cheers. I love that beer. And no, I am not trying to do an ad plug, so I'm going to post this, and I'll see you guys on Monday with my Huey Lewis cover. See ya.